Welcome to the Minimalist Educator Podcast, where the focus is on a less is more approach to education. Join your hosts, Christine Arnold and Tammy Musiałowski, authors of The Minimalist Teacher and Your School Leadership Edit, a minimalist approach to rethinking your school ecosystem, each week as they explore practical ways to simplify your work, sharpen your focus, and amplify what matters most so you can teach and lead with greater clarity, purpose, and joy.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode. We're diving into our Season 6 highlights, always one of our most popular episodes of the year. We've taken the pare-down pointers from the end of each episode and combined them into one mega episode featuring wisdom from all of our wonderful Season 6 guests. It's been a fantastic season with so many great conversations, so this is one bumper edition. We hope you'll enjoy it. Our first highlight today comes from episode 93 with Pete Hall, who had a great conversation with us about teaching kids who don't quite fit in the box. And he left us with a quote from Plato.
You know, there's so many different things that I could probably say right now. I'm going to go back to the big idea of so help me. Like, are you clear about what the actual goal is? I think that's got to be the starting point, is what is the actual goal? And then when it comes to really being able to focus yourself, in the wise words of Plato, know thyself, right? So you have to know what you're trying to accomplish and then what works best for you. So one of the things that works best for me is if I really have to work on something, and you mentioned I'm a prolific writer. If I'm working on some writing that I have to do, I have to shut everything else off. Like, I have to. And, Christine, you mentioned before, you don't feel bad anymore that you got a full-time job and you got 2 books. That is fantastic. That really is. My first book I wrote, I would journal throughout the course of my school year. And then I published a book called The First Year Principle. I don't advise anybody goes back and reads that. You don't have to. My second book, though, Building Teacher Capacity for Success, that was about instructional coaching and leadership, was done from 1 a.m. till 3 a.m. in the morning, 4 nights a week for about a year, right? So, and I had a co-author in that. We would be on the phone in the middle of the night talking through all the different stuff we were doing. The point being, I have to shut everything else off in order to be able to, so phone put away, notifications turned off, shut my email completely off my computer, focus on the thing you got in front of you, right? And I'd actually learned that lesson as a principal, sitting in my office, working on my computer, and a teacher came into my office and knocked on the door. Hey, Pete, you got a second? And I'm typing. The person's behind me. I'm typing. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. What's up? And she doesn't make any sound at all. And I type. And I looked over and she's still there. And I'm like, what do you need? Tell me. Type. And she's silent. And eventually I stopped typing. I turned around and she said, oh, now that I have your attention, we can talk. And it was such a powerful moment for me. I'm like, oh, thank you for, doing that in a respectful way. You could have said, hey, Pete, you beep, 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 turn around. But she did it so respectfully. And it was a powerful lesson. If you're going to do something, do that thing. That would be my piece of advice. Identify what it is you're doing and then do it.
Next up, we revisit episode 107 with Carrie Bishop and Jessica Holloway for a great conversation about teacher retention. Their pare-down pointer was that if you want to create an irresistible culture for teachers, you just need to use the people in the building.
One thing that we've come back to a lot here recently is prioritizing the people that you have to solve problems. And when you do that, you realize oftentimes the solution to your problems are already in your building. You just have to get the right voices in the room in order to develop the solutions. And sometimes the solutions don't cost anything. They're restructuring something, changing something, adding something in. And so, that also, when you prioritize the people who aren't directly involved or impacted by whatever problem you're trying to solve, it also ensures that they have a voice, that they're valued, that they feel trusted to help solve this problem. And then there's a shared ownership in it, going through the iterations of, did it work? Yes or no? Let's try something else. and they'll walk through that journey with you if they're part of it versus, well, boss, it didn't work. What's your next solution? And so if you prioritize the people you have to help you solve problems, oftentimes you are more successful and it's more sustainable.
Mine's pretty simple. I would just say when we talk about making your school irresistible, what we're really talking about is the culture that you create. We talked a little bit about identity, but we know that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And the reality is that you're building a culture. And as a school leader, or even as a teacher who has influence, I mean, you get to decide what kind of teammate you're going to be. We each get to have a hand in shaping culture. That is not something that someone who has a certain leadership role does. That's something we do together. We build a culture. And that's a big part of when we talk about identity. I think that's something that is extremely important and is going to determine whether people that you invite choose to join your team and whether people choose to stay.
Now we're going to jump over to a two-part episode we had with Dan Keller in 112 and 113. Dan shared with us the work that he is doing around what makes an effective learning environment, and his pare-down pointer left us with ideas for how we can maximize student growth.
I think it's really helpful to consider that if we want to maximize the growth of our students, we want to immerse them in a learning environment that is highly effective. And I propose, my best thinking from looking at this is that the metaphor of a garden may elicit the right responses within the educator to intrinsically align themselves with what the research suggests about what we should be doing. And that if we keep just thinking about tending a garden like tending our classroom or our school or whatever the learning environment is, the scale of it, if we just keep that idea that we are gardeners, I think it will not only have the intended effect on the learners, but it actually also, plenty of research behind this, it also just thinking about that nature metaphor has a calming effect on the educator, which then has a positive effect on the environment, which creates then a feedback loop that I think is positive. So lean into garden. I think I think there's something in that metaphor that is easy to take away and implement.
Next up, we go to episode number 94 with Sharon Skirtic. With Sharon, we discussed frameworks for high-quality learning in our schools and our districts. And her pare-down pointer was encouraging schools to take a moment to ask the questions.
One thing I would say, and I think it helps schools, is to ask questions. I think we know as learners that they learn a lot based on how they have the space to ask questions. And I think schools can do the same. And I know it's, we talk about, finding time, but it's super important for schools to take the time to understand who they are and to ask questions about the things they're doing. Because, my colleague always says, if a school doesn't know where they're going, they might end up someplace they don't want to be. And I think what I was talking about before in terms of, that high quality learning and that having a shared understanding of that is so important.
Next, let's jump over to episode 106 with Chris Fenning. We spoke with Chris about what we can do to improve our meetings, and his pare-down pointer was about the TPO formula and checking whether the topic, purpose, and output for a meeting is clear.
Yes, the one takeaway from this is to make everything better in all meetings is whether you're sending an invitation or you're receiving an invitation. If the topic, the purpose, and the output aren't clear, ask. If you're receiving it, ask. If you're writing the invitation, put them in. Topic, purpose, and output. Those things will help you plan a good meeting, introduce a good meeting, run a good meeting.
In episode 111, we spoke with Sarah Cordova about all things literacy with a very special lens on how useful picture books can be in our literacy instruction. The pare-down pointer she left us with was to prep and plan with a purpose.
I think I would come back to prep with purpose. Really, really thinking about what do I want my students to take away from this lesson, almost work backwards. And then how do I get there efficiently, effectively, and in an engaging way? It's like the 3 E's, right? We want to be effective, we want to be efficient, and we have to be engaging. But I think planning with purpose really allows us to cut out some of the things that maybe we don't need to do. Maybe we want to do them, but I don't know that we need to do them. And I think it just makes us more intentional in what we do. And, I think that is the key. Intention and purpose are the keys in this profession. So yeah, I hope that works.
We spoke with Judith and Lorena from Roma Planners in episode 96. We had a great discussion about their teacher planners as well as being teacher entrepreneurs as well. And their pare-down pointers were about focusing on your own needs and your priorities.
What helps me, to be honest, before I was very much on looking at the outside, looking what was happening outside of me. And what is helping me now is just I look what I need. And I focus more on what I need, and then I can give others what they need. If I don't do so, I would say focus on your needs before you want to focus on others' needs, because that will help you be more productive for others. In that say, like you will be more helpful to others if you don't take care of yourself.
Yeah, for me, I think focusing on priorities means having a structure where I can identify those priorities. So, as we said, we have this overwhelming environment in the classroom, in the school in general, and having this structure that I can control, that is under my control, then helps me even if there is noise and movement and things changing outside, then I can control what I'm doing and switch things based on what's happening outside, right? But yeah, making sure that a bit what Lorena said, that if you are in a good place, you are focusing on your well-being and you have things under control, then it's going to be easier to prioritize and focus on what matters.
We had a great conversation with Randy Zagenfuss about human-centered schools back in episode 108, and his pare-down pointer was a great reminder about the power of conversations.
I think that the message that I've been coming back lately is there's no problem or challenge the world has right now that can't be solved with a good conversation or multiple good conversations, not just one. Yeah. There's a lot of complexity out there. But I think that we, in the world that we're living in right now, we are missing that relational piece. We see too many people pointing the fingers. And when you see people pointing the finger, that is not agency. They don't want agency. They want to blame somebody else. That is not agency. Yeah. When you hear people pointing the finger, hold the mirror up, okay? Because you have to ask yourself, what am I doing to contribute to that problem? So I go back to, I think my best piece of advice would be, whenever you're experiencing a challenge, ask yourself, how can a relationship move this forward? Who do I need to have a conversation with to do this? So if I'm feeling pressure from those constituents, who do I need to build a relationship with? If there's a student who's a nudge, who do I need to have a relationship with? And it will definitely be the student, but also who else to do that. So I just think that, and I like that message because we live in a world where we're so worried about the technology and the AI taking away what it means to be uniquely human. And I think the more that we can practice being uniquely human in systems that are very good at dehumanizing, building the relationship is always a good first step.
Patty McGee visited us in episode 105 to talk to us about her approach to grammar. And she left us with a pare-down pointer about a daily 2-minute edit practice.
One of my favorite, as I like to call simple, powerful, and free things that we can do, pretty much that's all I've shared here. I'm into, I call it SPF approved, simple, powerful, and free approved, is a daily 2-minute edit. We're seeing a lot of grammatical mishaps, let's say, because sometimes grammar doesn't need to be followed to the T if it's intentional. But sometimes we wait until the very end to do any editing. And if we want that editing muscle to really stay strong and continue to grow, simply setting a timer for 2 minutes and saying to students, we're not instructing during this time, go back to your piece and edit it. Edit it for spelling. We could give them a focus, or edit it for spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. And 2 minutes on that. It won't be the whole piece. Just try it out and make sure that it's as sound as it can be.
We had a fascinating chat about place-based science education with authors Whitney Aragaki and Kirsten Milks in episode number 97. Their pare-down pointers were it's okay to not know everything and encouraging us to create a list of student questions.
So I talked about starting small, right? And the power of that. I think another really important one is that it's okay that you don't know everything. You know, I've worked in systems with evaluations where teachers get dinged if they can't answer every single student question. That's not how we model learning for people, right? I don't know, but we can find out, or I don't know, who could we ask? Boy, those are some really powerful ways that you can model for learners what it looks like to go out in the world and learn things. And I think that acknowledging that you don't have all the answers yet, but that you're learning alongside students, it like frees up a lot of that shame that I otherwise have felt about not yet knowing. I think that'd be my tip.
So along those lines, I want to share something when we talk about talking to elders and talking to others in the community. It is a joy to see how students connect. It also can be a pain point if they don't know what to ask, or if the elder does not know how much to share. And so a pare-down point that I'd like to share when talking with community, talking with elders, is helping students create a list of questions and having a common list of questions that they can come back and share with each other afterwards. So it's the 3 questions. It's a way to start the conversation. It's a way to frame a potentially uncomfortable, why are you asking me this kind of thing in the intermediary. And it's something that would align with how and what elders can and might share with students. So that's something that I'd like to suggest.
In episode 109, we were lucky enough to have returning guest Ellie Rodman give us an update on what she's been working on within school systems. The pare-down pointer she shared with us is that adding more systems might not necessarily be a good thing.
Even as someone deeply committed to systems, we need to recognize that more systems and more layers aren't always necessary and aren't always the answer. So sometimes the next step forward is thinking about, how are we paring down? How are we pulling back? How are we taking the easier path around the mountain instead of trying to create, and blaze like one more trail forward? And really thinking about, how are we making space for things as much as we add new things to our daily action plans?
The wonderful Josephine Hunt visited us for episode 101 to talk about student resilience, and she referred us to the systematic training of effective parenting and teaching programs for her pare-down pointer.
I would love for them to look into the systematic training for effective teaching or systematic training for effective parenting. The curriculum and program I have nothing to do with. I just happen to be lucky to get the knowledge of that. And then I trained myself in it and I have implemented it. And I find it to be very eye-opening and effective. And I've been practicing it for over 2 decades. And so if I could educate other educators, that would be a direction that I would love for them to, look into, because it will absolutely help the intrinsic motivation.
And now to what has got to be one of my favorite pare-down pointers of this season. In episode 98, we spoke with Pete Turner about his work on kids accessing media rated for older audiences. His pare-down pointer is to think like the Blair Witch Project.
I think my tip would be sort of going back to what I just said, like think like the best horror films. If you accept that the Blair Witch Project is one of the best horror films ever made, that is a film that didn't have a completed script. Its actors weren't professional actors. Its directors had never done it before. It was all largely kind of improvised. So I guess what I'm saying is trust yourself, and maybe tying in with you guys' next project, like things don't have to be perfect. Things don't have to be perfect straight away, especially if it's stopping you from moving forward. I know too many people who procrastinate because they're trying to get things perfect first go. Don't do that. Just try and get your thoughts out of you.
Casey Watts joined us in episode 104 with a really thoughtful discussion around her work in clarity in schools. And her pare-down pointer was all about asking questions to find our focus and our goals.
Yes. Okay. Here is my pare-down pointer. And I'm going to say 3 different things. Okay. Number 1, what are you focused on? Number 2, what are goals that are related to that focus? And then number 3, this is really important, ask your people about that focus and those goals. The most important thing anyone can do when they are really trying to gain clarity for themselves and create clarity for other people is gain insight. You have to know what other people are thinking, what thoughts they're processing, what they've done and what they haven't done, in order to gain clarity for yourself and create clarity for your people. So one of the strategies I talk about in the book and that I teach to instructional leadership teams is going on listening tours. And you are simply listening. You're asking some really thoughtful, intentional questions, and then you're just stepping back and listening, taking notes and saying, thank you. That's it. That's all we have to do. That's a first step to starting to gain clarity and create clarity.
For our final highlight, we're going to go back to our very first episode of season 6, episode 91, with our good friend Nicole Dissinger. And she reminds us that after a school break, it is good not to overplan.
Yeah, I think my one thing would just be don't overplan. Right? Just keep it simple to start. Like, it doesn't mean you have to do it for weeks on end, but at least the first few days, I would say just keep it really simple and just focus on your relationships and resetting your classroom expectations and resetting your classroom culture, and then go from there. Like, don't over plan too. Like, don't plan like 3 weeks out in advance. Like, just do the first couple of days and see how things go. Like, just try to keep like your workload minimum so that you can enjoy your students too coming back. And you're also then ready for whatever might come, because you don't have like an agenda of like everything that needs to be accomplished.
And that brings us to the close of season 6, and what a season it has been. We have really been lucky to welcome some truly wonderful guests, and we hope that the conversations, stories, and highlights here have been as meaningful for you to listen to as they've been for us. Thank you for all of your continued support. We do want to announce something new. This summer, for the first time, we will be running a summer series dedicated entirely to listener Q&A. So we'll be drawing on questions sent in from listeners around the world, and it's our way of handing the mic back over to you. So we hope you enjoy it, and we look forward to connecting with you throughout the summer and season 7 after the summer. Until then, take care. This episode is sponsored by Plan Z Education Services, supporting educators with forward-thinking professional learning that puts both student impact and teacher wellness at the centre. Driven by a vision to teach less, impact more, they help educators find purpose, prioritise what matters, and simplify their practice. Learn more at planzeducation.com.
Thank you for listening to the Minimalist Educator Podcast. Join Christine and Tammy and guests again next time for more conversations about how to simplify and clarify the responsibilities and tasks in your role. If today's episode helped you rethink, reimagine, reduce, or realign something in your practice, share it in a comment or with a colleague. For resources and updates, visit planzeducation.com and subscribe to receive weekly emails. Until next time, keep it simple and stay intentional.